Howdy. I think I just make a read through of that. I wrote another paper. Maybe it will get once published, maybe not. Mountainwater, a new approach to mountain forming, volcanism, glaciers, and the role of water in an electric environment. Introduction Baden, Switzerland. Figure 1, the Schartenfels is a few hundred meters from the thermal baths and is a nice example for the special geology in the region. It is the foot of the Lagern Hill, the last hill belonging to the Jura Massif on the east side. We might start this journey with a short and therefore not complete recapitulation of how Earth got formed according to common theory. At the beginning, there was just a rocky hot ball swirling through space. It didn't have even really an atmosphere. Volcanoes were erupting everywhere. This process continued for a very long time, millions and millions of years. For some miraculous reason, Earth got captured by the sun's gravitational field and all the things settled. Volcanoes stopped erupting over time and the sky brightened. The sun could shine through, providing light and warmth. All of a sudden, life emerged and its diversity exploded exponentially. Continental plates formed randomly, slid over the globe, crashed into each other, and created the mountains, or they got ripped apart and formed valleys, lakes, or even oceans. Later, everything froze over several times. Glaciers got formed, which through their movement downhill carved out all the valleys. Furthermore, they provide the environment with fresh water throughout the year. They are known for being the bulldozers of nature. In recent years, glaciers came more and more into focus in the climate change discussion because many glaciers are melting away and people started to understand how much their living relies on fresh water. The events described above are generally really slow. So slow they are impossible to recreate in a laboratory. Furthermore, many of these events occurred hundreds of millions of years ago. Common theory is full of contradictions and mysteries, which might indicate a fundamental problem with the worldview paradigms. A good example is metamorphic rock. Previous existing rocks somehow morph into another kind of rock. Something provide at least heat and pressure, but it remains unknown or unexplained what or how this metamorphic process occurs. Metamorphic rock seems to just occur out of the blue in very many places, in many different forms, and made out of many different ingredients. It's just there. The question must be asked. What is missing in the picture? Why doesn't the common theory make any progress? Why it seems stuck in place since origination about 150 years ago? How could a theory which lacks so much evidence be established in the first place? To address this issue, I try to paint another picture of how these processes may have occurred and, of course, still occur. Let me bring forward a new view onto mountains and their water. This is from SciTech Daily, last 2 years ago, 3rd of October. Textbooks and geoscientists may be wrong about how the Alps were formed. And this is the scientific article to the thing. Earth is a spherical body with many layers. We have atmospheric and geologic layers. They are made from the same materials but appear in different mixtures, charged states, temperatures, and densities. This means, for example, that we have H2O in all four states, frozen, liquid, plasma, and EZ water, which is its ability to create an electromagnetic field by surface tension. Hence, it works in a way like a double layer. This occurs mainly in hydrophilic environments, and rocks are often hydrophilic. It is fairly uncommon to find pure H2O in nature. It almost always has a mixture of impurities. Elements react differently in water, especially with the huge mixture of elements from mountains. The changes in the environment may also include a change in the electromagnetic environment. All planets in our solar system are within the heliosphere boundary, the most outer sphere of our Sun. Thus, our solar system is much more a sphere than a disk, magnetically speaking. Earth and Sun have north and south poles where the Birkeland currents flows through the heavenly bodies and keeps them connected and charged, maintaining a shielding magnetosphere. Any fluctuation in these currents will affect the body inevitably. The seriousness of the effects range widely. These fluctuations often occur in cycles. Earth is also attached to one of the arms of our galaxy, which is a live connection to a cosmological scale Birkeland current. Our galaxy has a spherical magnetosphere as well, not necessarily round like a ball, but more of a bubble. Like soap bubbles that deform and react when you blow at them, they deform and bounce back into almost perfect circular shape. Except we must remember on Earth gravitational pull downwards. So the bubble is more like an upside down drop. Space is like a fluid in which magnetic bubbles materializable, losing its material as it flows downwards. It discharges until material the bubble is made of loses connection and can no longer sustain the applied charge, blowing up the bubble, and it bursts. Maybe you have noticed that small droplets may spread at relatively high speed in all directions from a generally steady state. Once energy is released, it is part of any circuit, so it will spread rapidly in all directions. Sometimes you can even hear a soap bubble burst. It is a shock wave that you hear. Scalability. Nature always searches for equilibrium through the path of least resistance and greatest conductance, which is noticeable in repetitive patterns. These processes can be very violent and fast. It is important to understand that no one alive today has experienced anywhere near the potential power that lies in nature. Basically, all natural occurrences like earthquakes, rain, snow, temperature, wind, volcanoes, etc. can be amplified simply by inducing more energy into Earth's electrical circuit. Also, the importance of the cyclical nature of these events must be taken seriously. People like Ben Davidson, with his daily news broadcasts, Suspicious Observers on YouTube, are doing all they can to raise the awareness of this fact. The topic of natural cosmic cycles is a big part of the program. The following image shows an overview of the cycles. Earth is a capacitor in space. If the current which is flowing through it fluctuates, the capacitor either takes energy in or it discharges. Earth's magnetosphere wobbles if there are fluctuations in its environment. Hence, CMEs, flares, coronal hole streams have an effect on the actual shape of the sphere. This means it gets compressed or it expands according to the changes. Yes, there's at least two faults I noticed. Earth has many electrical circuits and they're all connected with each other, which is through water. The electrical force is about 10 to the 39 times stronger than the gravitational force. So gravitation is just an effect of the electric force and therefore not a force itself, which means that the water mass stored in Earth's crust, mantle, or below is not held in place by gravitation. It is held in place by the same electromagnetic mechanics as our atmosphere is held in place. Our world is composed of spheres within spheres, from micro to macro scale, and the charge is dictating the size of each sphere. So if the charge fluctuates, the size of the sphere fluctuates too, which means the water in the ground could easily rise upwards to the surface. When this happens, we experience effects like liquefaction and floods. We are all standing on more or less active ground. Some places may have elevated geothermal activity, some may have volcanoes, and some aren't really active at all in the sense that it could affect everyday life. In fact, many cities and villages are built near or on the site of either special geological occurrences such as metals or stone, and maybe even more important, near on the site of special geothermal occurrences. The same principle applies at least to some degree to the locality of sacred places, which are often buried and or by churches. They were some special natural places related to the gods, but most likely they are the result of a totally natural event which shaped the landscape. Europe is not known for being very rich in volcanoes. There are a few exceptions like Italy or Iceland. Otherwise, the region is considered as somewhat stable. Let's have a closer look at the Alps and Central Europe, northern and southern of the Alps. We find glaciers, mineral springs, volcanoes, all sorts of mining operations, metals, minerals, salt, geothermal activity, long river system, and many stories about dragons. For example, Schloss Drachenburg at the River Rhine in Germany. Figure 4 shows the connection between mysticism and nature. The river flows into the direction to the dragon once came from. Dozens of places amongst the rivers of Europe which have mystic names and often are also dragons mentioned with their different names: lions, eagle, or griffins. Dragons are everywhere. Very often, if something happens like landslides, floods, or quakes, they are not considered as related to volcanic activity by the local officials. They may explain it as related to a mining operation, bad weather, or something related to the geothermal industry, but never to volcanism. There are a few places to go hiking, and glacial caves with mineral springs are known about for hundreds of years. In the Serfaus-Vis-Ladis region in Austria, there is the country's highest bottling plant. The spring was discovered in the year 1212 by a shepherd. The sour water was famously known as far as Russia. Eventually, an earthquake occurred in the year 1671, which lowered the outflow significantly. The many-meter-high fountain disappeared after the quake. It was quite a sight in the year 1212. How many similar things occurred since the time of creation that no one knows about? The Alps region is also known for its pile-dwelling settlements. Some are dated as far back as 5,000 years. Many of the settlements are submerged, but some are reconstructed and function nowadays as museums. According to archaeologists, the reason for building houses on piles is most likely preventing wild animals reaching the settlement. This never made any sense to me. I wondered why they didn't just build a fence. This theory suggests the reason for building houses on pillars clearly elevated from the ground might have been the occasional flooding. In ancient times, flash floods may have occurred much more often because the region was much more active volcanically. We could imagine ancient people being very aware of the danger of flash floods. They also knew that water from mountain springs can be also very healthy. Maybe they had observation posts along known paths of flash floods. When an eruption occurred, someone was blowing into a horn to warn the people downstream, and they went up into their houses to wait the flash flood go by. Maybe this was the reason why someone invented the Alp horn. It is a huge instrument and can be heard from great distances. Pile dwellings of the Alps region. Figure 5 gives an overview of the surprising amount of pile dwellings around the Alps. The pile dwellings at Unterhuldingen are reconstructed and turned into a museum, which is part of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites. The Romans put great effort in building many thermal bath complexes and all kinds of other things too in the region. In the town Baden, Switzerland, there is a very long tradition of thermal bathing which was started by the Romans. Baden means simply bathing. It has the hottest and most mineral-rich water in Switzerland and is located at geologically interesting place. The river Limmat flows through it, joining two rivers after a few kilometers. In other words, the Aare and the Reuss. The three rivers discharge as the Aare into the river Rhine only after a few kilometers. Here we have the connection to volcanoes because the Rhine River turns 90 degrees north after the Kaiserstuhl volcano. Roman legionnaires built the first large-scale thermal baths here in the 2nd century AD, which paved the way for the spa settlement of Aqua Helvetica. The baths are at Aqua Helvetica made up the most prominent Roman spa settlement in the territory of present-day Switzerland and served as a place for medical treatments, as a religious center, and as an important social meeting place. Money. Looking at the map makes the connection easy to see how the Alps are connected to volcanoes and later on to the sea, not visible on the map anymore. On the left is a screenshot from the volcano discovery application. Several flows of energy, in this case rivers, connect volcanoes and the Alps region. The one on the right is from the thermal bath page. So, it is not too far-fetched to claim that geothermal energy is a part of the catalogue of volcanism and not only a side effect. As a very good evidence that the forming process of Baden's interest in geology also included electricity, we only have to take a look at the 20-meter-high fulgurites in the Devil's Cave area, which is situated about 1 kilometer from the thermal springs, but about 100 meters higher. The springs were, of course, existing and used before the arrival of the Romans. That's the fulgurite. The following picture is from the article made in 2011 by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory with the title A Broad Overview of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy for the Department of Defense Installation, UN's government. Shows that almost all Central Europe has geothermal potential, which also might be an indicator for its relatively young geological age. The hotspots in Germany and France are volcanoes, the Eifel and Clermont-Ferrand. Geothermal activity in Central Europe has always been a big part of its history, past, present, and future. So I will leave it here. I noticed some mistakes which I haven't noticed earlier. I apologize for those. I make still those corrections. And I probably will read more of that later on. But I just thought I'd share that. I put some time into this. And somehow I think it's important. That's why I wrote the whole thing. But let's see what some other people think about that. Is it worth to spread it further than just here on YouTube from some freaky dude who thinks about things no one cares about? But anyway, I will leave it here. Maybe I'll continue once. Let's see. Thanks.